The hall in Croydon has been a very important part of Croydon's development for, well, 100 years now. Yeah. And in fact, the folk around the area here decided on needing a hall and a mechanics institute back in 1909 when Croydon was just a number of farms and a few shops. Townsfolk decided, yes, we'll raise money, and they had it built in 1909, and the Premier of Victoria, the Honourable John Murray, came out on the 29th of October 1909 and opened the hall. And on that day there was a bazaar, like a fete, and the local folk were seeking to raise money to fit out the inside of the hall. And yes, they kept the bazaar going for 3 days and raised as much as they could, and were so proud of their new hall. And it was well used and has been well used ever since.
It was used for cricket meetings during the summer, it was used for football meetings during the winter, it would be used by the Progress Association. The Agricultural Society would have their flower show in here. So you know, everything that happened around the town, this was the only hall. And as Elsa said, the only alternative was the Scout Hall up in Kent Avenue, but it was much smaller than this.
British and Foreign Bible Society days, youth marches for Empire Day, Anzac Day parades, Armistice Day parades. They all ended up here in the hall, and there would be a speaker.
The elections for the councils, that was there. The voting for the elections, and I even did gym classes in the main part of the hall.
And we used to have our cricket meetings in here. There's a little room up the top at the back there that used to be stairs running up to it. We used to have executive meetings up in that hall. The blood bank used to come into the supper room, which is where we used to all give blood in there.
Two big shows, the autumn show and the spring show, which was for agricultural and floral shows that were put on. Everybody participated in that. It was all of Croydon came to these functions. Everybody was so community minded, and especially the shows where all the ladies through the year had done all the bottling and preserve making of all the fruit that was grown in the area at that time. And my mother was an ardent one of bottling and not wasting anything, so she took off many prizes, and it was quite competitive between all the ladies of Croydon at the time. But they would bottle anything. I'll never forget the great big bottle of plum pudding that my mother made in a big long bottle, and that lasted us for quite some time with her bottling. And Dad used to catch eels, and he would bring them home, and Mum would, that was a smaller bottling outfit, and they would bottle eels, so she was very imaginative.
Been to many horticultural society flower shows. We used to have those here, and sang a few times on the stage with Nancy Ball, and also that was also at naturalisation ceremonies.
February of 1983, and I think 40 or 50 people were being naturalised at the same time.
Yeah.
And I was suffering laryngitis, which made the evening very interesting. And we all finished the evening with a nice cuppa and a biscuit.
I was naturalised here in about 61 or 62, I'd have to check that. And there were 7 of us being naturalised. So, yes, that would have been the highlight, I expect.
And I even had a very little library for children, which was also run by volunteers, and they gathered books from all around Croydon for this library.
My father was a great reader, and he used to belong to the Mechanics Institute Library, and he'd read a couple of books a week, and then every now and again a whole stack of books would come, because the Mechanics Institute used to change over the books, and new books would come and the old ones would go.
I was only a very, very little girl when my mother and father brought me down here to the Mechanics Institute, and we went to see a lantern lecture. It was a big screen was put up on the stage, and then the tripod, similar to that camera one there, was brought in with a box type thing on front of it, on top, and used to put glass slides into it, which is an imprint of a picture taken overseas or whatever. The gentleman who did it was Mr. Gibson, who travelled with the British and Foreign Bible Society, and he brought different photographs back from these overseas countries, which was such a wonder to us all.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yes, because there was no television or anything like that in those days. And we were just amazed. We'd sit staring at this picture up on the screen while he told us all about it. And it was the most fascinating thing. And the hall would be full to capacity with people that would come down to listen to his lectures.
Baby health centres were seen as very important to help with babies and young children in the area, and Croydon was one of the first towns in Victoria to have a baby health centre, and they met for 3 years in the Croydon Hall. 2 days a week they'd have a nursing sister come, and mothers would bring their babies and check their health and so on. And then just next door to the hall is the Baby Health Centre building, which still stands there, and that was built in 1930.
They used to do the blood bank there too. Actually, that's where they told me blood wasn't worth bottling. They didn't really want it. Upset me no end. Also, they used to do eye testing there. I don't quite remember exactly what it was all about, but Gartner from Ringwood did the testing at the time. He was a friend through a cousin of ours from England.
My father was the doctor. He was the only doctor in Croydon. And one of the things that was a highlight, he used to run first aid classes in the supper room, and I was the guinea pig who, when the exams were on, people had to bandage me or take my temperature or all that sort of thing.
The hall was used for local groups, and during the First World War the Red Cross used to meet there, among other things. And when the First World War finished, there was great celebrations, and the returned servicemen and relatives had a big function, celebration in the hall, and we've got a photo of the hall and the returned servicemen.
I think, just from memory, during the war, across the road there used to be a place, Tate's Motors, and on top of the building was a big siren. And you'd be over at school, and all of a sudden the siren would go, and you had to dive under your desks. And I'm pretty sure we had to come over here a couple of times. You remember?
Right, yes.
Come over here to get out of, just in case there was somebody flying up above.
What about when there was a fire and they used to sound a siren, and volunteers would come from everywhere and hop on the fire cart as it went through the main street and put out fires?
Ringing the bell.
One of the real highlights was when the bushfires on the western face of Mount Dandenong, Montrose was burned out, and this was an emergency centre, and people were lined up sleeping on the floor here. Oh wow! And the Red Cross was running the show, and one elderly Red Cross lady, Mrs. Pearson, cooked some enormous volume of sausages for firefighters who came here for respite, and other people who'd been burnt out were sleeping on the floor.
Any entertainment this was the only place
Of any size.
of any size.
The only choices you had was here or the Scout Hall.
Okay.
So any function that was in
The Scout Hall was small.
in the town, if it was any size, would need to be here, like the football club balls and those sort of things had to be in this building.
As teenagers and young women and after we were married, you know, we used all the dances that were there. There was something on at the hall nearly every night. The wonderful parts were the big balls that were held, the footballers' ball, the cricketers' ball. There was always a ball coming up, and the girls went to a deal of fuss with long dresses.
I can imagine.
Beautiful. And, you know, we all dressed up for going to a ball. And it was just so exciting.
The returned soldiers, they had a representative of the Army, Navy and Air Force, and then they had a crowning a Queen. And we had a great ball at the end of it where the Queen was crowned, who was Alma Hall was her name, and I was one of the princesses and Joan Porter was the other one.
1926, they had a silent movie, and that was one of the new inventions and great excitement in the little township when they had a silent movie. And then the first movie with sound was even greater excitement in 1931.
They used to run the movies here.
There's matinees, and then when I was old enough, I was allowed to go to the pictures at night, but had to be on that bus. The bus used to come in.
Bus used to come in from Brushy Park, and another one came in from Wonga Park.
Okay.
The ladies all had their permanent seats.
One come in from Bayswater on a Saturday night.
First time I came into this beautiful old hall was way back in the 1950s, somewhere about 1957 to 58. And the movies were operated then by a chap called John Mackenzie. And he invited me to come along and see a show. We'd known each other, boyhood friends. And I found that I was sitting virtually where I am now, watching some of these grand old black and white British comedies that used to be shown here.
I enjoyed going to the matinees that were held on a Saturday, and that was good. My brother would dink me down on the bike. I'd sit on the bar of the boys' bike, and mother would give me 7pence, 6pence to get in, and a penny for an ice block. And I saw all the Shirley Temple films. I saw every one.
I used to work here. I used to operate the movies here, going way, way back. And it was a family situation. My wife would help me, and we, at the time, had only just been married a very short time when I moved in to run the movies here. So I'd have my wife in the ticket box, and behind her was our newborn baby. I was a little bit of a fanatic for movies. I like to sit back, enjoy with the audience, and then someone dropped the Jaffas. Now, this hall had a wooden floor, and it was on an angle, and of course, you drop the Jaffas, bang, and all the way down the hall it would run, bang, 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 bang.
You roll the Jaffas, nice.
If you got thrown out, you get one of your mates in here to unwind the window, stand on a box or something outside and look in.
I remember coming here to watch the movies and looking at the girls and the boys in the back row kissing and thinking it was really not right. Then we walk across the road, get lollies in interval and come back.
The movies were the connection with us to the world, apart from the newspaper. There's no television. The radio wasn't a great amount of radio. You had your movie tone newses and all those sorts of things. You're getting war reports come back in. And
there were a group of locals here in Croydon. In particular, a lady I know was Betty Jope. I knew, I should say. And she was instrumental in getting the local people interested and getting the Film Society started. And they started screening, as you said, in 1956 using 16mm projectors. A number of years later, in 1959, we acquired two fairly antique but very good 35mm projectors. And from then on, we've burgeoned and shown screenings fortnightly on Monday night. We've still maintained that tradition right up till now. Our time here in the hall was one that's fondly remembered by our members, although we went through a number of hardships. It was hot in the summer. We had installed the fans in the ceiling. In fact, you'll probably see them up there now. We installed those to try and keep our members cool. The doors were open, so we had to bring fly spray to get rid of the mosquitoes or minimise the effects. And yeah, we did a lot to develop our what we called our home here in the hall.
I joined the society in 1970 and became a member of the committee in 1972, and I've served on the committee continuously since that time up until now. So I've seen a lot of changes in the society, and I've got quite a few fond remembrances of this old Croydon Mechanics Hall as our initial home for the society. As Max has pointed out, it was pretty rough and ready. We installed some theatre type seats, which did make it a little bit more comfortable for members, but on occasions when our membership was large, which it was over a number of years, particularly in the late 1970s and early 1980s, where we had in excess of 500 or 600 members, you can imagine trying to cram a number of people into this hall to see a film, and as Max says, if it was hot or if it was cold, the conditions were quite uncomfortable. But people were passionate about film and continued to come along irrespective of the conditions, and to watch good quality movies.
The extensions were made in 1933, and the new front that we now have was put on it in 1937. So the rest is the old building that was built back in 1909.
So I did my apprenticeship up at Highway Timber, they were in the main street in those days. Now this hall, when it was built, the windows in it were what we used to call box frames, which were cords and weights. And when I was with you the other day, I went for a walk around the hall. There are two of those original box frames are on that back wall, and I'd like to get into that room later on if I could, because Noel Hall, who's now passed away, and myself used to be the guys from Highway Timber Joinery Shop that used to come down here to fix any breakages, windows, cords break, any repairs to the hall. The council used to call us to fix it up.
There's been a lot of work done on it to maintain it to what you still see here today. There's been extensions and extensive restumping work that I can remember.
I think the stage was different at the front. They used to come up on both sides. There was a ramp up on both sides, and it wasn't as well painted in those days, I don't think.
All this hallway, all the hall itself used to be in black and dark green, and it's all been brought back to Art Deco type colours and everything again. The whole lot's been sorted out, like as far as all the maintenance issues and that go before you can paint it all and get it all prepared. We had scaffolds in here, and we've had to have them up, 4 metres high, 5 metres high, so the painters can get up and finish off all the ceiling and get all that prepared. Out in the foyer out there, we've had all the walls were done in like a burgundy colour and yellow, and they've all been painted back into a softer green colour with the Art Deco around the ceiling.
This is the only building in Croydon that I can sort of visualise that has kept its appearance.
I see.
It's as it was.
I see.
And it still is.
I think now it's really a great place for young people to come and be entertained and also, of course, socialise, which is very important.
I think it's a wonderful place for kids to come and feel safe and have a good time and a laugh and know that there's somewhere to go at any time, that they can be themselves or play music or do whatever they like, because there aren't that many places left.
It's given me a lot of confidence because, well, before I came here, I actually had no idea about AVs, and that was at the start of this year. And the first thing I did with it was the Young Leaders program, and that, it really helped build my confidence and everything like that. And I went on from there to do a community action project where we helped within the community, and we made a film about bullying, and we showed it in local schools in the area, and it was yeah, it was just, you know, a really good experience, and I learned so much from EVs. Everyone works so hard here to, you know, make it a better place and make everything comfortable for everyone who comes in, and it's just a really good place to be.
Dream a dream of me. Up a lazy river where the robin's song wakes a brand new morning we can long.